Well, hello there, how is everyone? I hope you're all well on this fabulous Monday. That's right, baby, it's Monday, and I'm sure we're going to have an absolutely fantastic week. And do you know what else is fantastic? You. That's right, you are fantastic. You are fantastic, you look fantastic. And like I say, we're going to have a fantastic week together. So let's crack on as we get straight into the meat and potatoes and talk about the next hearing, because that is, in the Idaho 4 case, what everybody is now waiting for with bated breath, as we're now hearing that this will be a non-public hearing. That's right. Judge the judge has said that there will be no cameras in this hearing, and this will be the motion to dismiss. And on screen here, you will see the paperwork for that. So basically, we're going to be looking to see whether or not this case is going to be dismissed. And the question is there a potential, is there a possibility? Could this case indeed be dismissed? And what does it mean to be dismissed? Does it mean that this would then be over? No, it doesn't. That could well and truly be dismissed, and it would give them the ability to get their ducks properly in a row and obviously restart, go down the route again. But is there a potential for this to be dismissed? I think that there's going to be a lot of people who think, no, definitely not. But I think the biggest question to ask yourself is this. Now, if there had have been a proper investigation, now what we learned at the beginning of the Idaho 4 case through the public, conversations with Moscow PD and James Fry, that they had brought in and had conversations, they had interviewed multiple people. I think there was like 60 people. So many people had been ruled out. We heard quite early on that the likes of Jack and co, they had been ruled out. They were sleeping. It couldn't have possibly been them. There was no involvement with them whatsoever. They were asleep. And we've also heard how people like Inan Harsh, they are also brought in. We heard from Jeremy, the weird neighbour, who himself went in and offered up his DNA. So, Moscow PD have pretty much spoken to a multitude of people. Now, it's a little bit of a strange sort of feeling around this, because when you hear the likes of WSU Kim and Dave, they kind of make it sound like law enforcement weren't kind of actively going after people and interviewing them, the people close by. So I'm not 100% sure what was going on there. But and it also sounds like James Fry was asking during the press conferences for a lot of people to come forward. He wanted to speak to people who were seemingly around the victims the night that this happened, whether it be through the social media posts and interactions or the grub truck, the corner club, all of these. They spoke to the drivers, apparently the DoorDash, everybody, absolutely everybody was spoken to. But with regards to Bryan Kohberger, however, it doesn't seem like he was brought in to have anything presented to him earlier on. It was all a case of systems, go, let's bust in like Rambo into the house and then take him in for questioning as they arrest him and charge him for this. And there's no evidence of that because that wasn't filmed or anything. But who are we to question? Who are we to question law enforcement? I'm sure that there is a valid reason for one of the most hyped up, one of the most sensational crimes, and certainly the biggest crime that this place has ever seen and likely to see, hopefully, for it not to be recorded. But what you have to ask yourself is, look where Bryan Kohberger is. And look at the evidence with which we have been made aware of. All of the stuff that we have seen. The multitude of information. The discovery has been something that Ann Taylor has fought. Bryan Kohberger has fought to get hold of. There has been no fewer than seven requests for discovery that basically they just want, look, what evidence do you have that is enough for my client to be here? to be here in this courtroom facing the firing squad, for fuck's sake. Look, if he had have been part of these people who had been brought in and questioned, so gone down the normal route to this point, where, like you see these videos on Drip Drop's channel, Crime Circus, where they're sitting around a table and there's a little recorder and there's cameras up in the corner and, they're questioning, what was you doing this night? Well, I was driving around. I drive around a lot. That's what I do. I just drive around. I don't really have a lot of friends. I'm a night owl. I'm always doing stuff at night, and sometimes I don't want to sit in the four walls. I just want to jump in a car and go for a spin. That's what I was doing. Okay. Would that have been enough for them to charge him with 4 murders? I don't think so. Now, the biggest part here is obviously the knife sheath. There's a knife sheath there with DNA on it. They obviously wouldn't have had that at that point. At the point with which they would have brought him in and questioned him about this crime, because potentially they'd have got the car and potentially the phone data to find out that his phone had pinged in the area and locked him on. Hold on a second, the phone data didn't lock him into the area. We just know that he turned his phone off around the time with which they believe this happened because of an eyewitness that at one point didn't exist, then later on existed. See, this is the problem. What people struggle with is when they hear White Hyundai Elantra, people automatically think that the killer in this case drove a White Hyundai Elantra. So they're thinking, well, what's the coincidence between the killer having a White Hyundai Elantra and Bryan Kohberger having a White Hyundai Elantra? But what people fail to understand is that we don't know if the killer drove a White Hyundai Elantra. The only White Hyundai Elantra that has been found in connection, or what they believe is in connection with this, was Bryan Kohberger's, which they had to adapt the year of this vehicle to make it fit what they believed they were originally looking for, and that had no evidence in it whatsoever that would link it to this crime. And when we talk about links, again, what we've spoken about multiple times is that Ann Taylor said that there's no link to this. There's no link between Bryan Kohberger and the victims. So I take you back. If Bryan had been took in for questioning, would there have been enough at that point for him to have been charged with the murders of 4 victims at 1122 King Road? So that's why you have to consider, is there a potential for this to be dismissed? In my opinion, which is a non-professional opinion, and I'm not, native to the US, I'm overseas in the UK, God help me, and I struggle to conclude that had Bryan Kohberger been took in for questioning along normal channels, like they did with every single other person around the place, apparently, would he have had enough presented to him to have charged him with this crime? He certainly wouldn't have been at this point asking for discovery 7 times, would he? Because at that point during this interview, this would have all been sorted. He would have been shown the evidence. This is why we believe you done it, Mr. Bryan Kohberger. Explain that. And when he got into court, he would have known exactly why he was in court, because he would have... But that's not there. There's nothing there. And we've either got to believe that Ann Taylor is lying and there is in fact a connection, or you're believing that there is going to be some revelation down the line somewhere that's going to blow the whole case wide open and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it. Well, if that's the case, then why are they still asking for discovery 8-9 months down the line? And they're now asking for a dismissal. Now, with respect of a biased grand jury, I think there's good grounds there that the grand jury is going to be biased, isn't it? Because I don't think that there's an opportunity anywhere around here to get anything that isn't biased. Every single... what can I say? The mainstream media bias. And apart from, we did talk yesterday on the 48 Hours documentary, which was well done. Like I say, there was some elements in it that I felt was inaccurate, but it wasn't overly biased. It wasn't pushing the Bryan Kohberger's definitely guilty. And what I will say, I'm going to interject here because I saw some comments over on Jules of All Trades video when she done a summary of it. And people were saying about Bryan Kohberger supervisors, and they were saying, oh, even the Gonsalves family, Steve Gonsalves and Christy Gonsalves, they are 100% sure that it's Bryan Kohberger. You are wrong. It was stated within that documentary very clearly by Steve Gonsalves himself is that he is open to the potential that there is something else going on. And it's, if they've got the guy, then let's have cameras in the courtroom. Let's see the evidence that you've got and see it being proven that he is in fact the guy. Because they either have or they haven't. And whereas Christie is firmly in the belief that they've got the right guy, Steve could not agree to that. And it was stated that that is something that they actually disagree on. So get your fucking ducks in a row. This is what we see all the time. And this is why so many people are struggling to understand that this isn't quite as straightforward and clean cut, because there's people who are pushing information on social media, in the comment section. They're pushing stuff that just isn't right, isn't real, isn't true, is rubbish. And there's people who depend upon channels like this, channels like Grizzly, channels like, multiple, I won't say News Nation a lot, but there's people who they get their news from YouTube. They don't trust mainstream media, and quite rightly so in a vast majority of cases. Or they'll go over to Lawyer and respectable channels that talk about these cases. So when they see things in the comments, they take that as gospel. They'll hear that Steve and Christy are firmly in, this is what we believe. That we know. We absolutely know. And they'll think that they do. And that's not the case. It's a lie. It's a flat-out lie. But anyway, I digress. So, could this get dismissed? I believe that there is a part of me that feels that it could get dismissed. Now, do I feel that having no cameras in there, that Bryan Kohberger could potentially not get a fair hearing in there? Now, that's something that I've considered as well. Ultimately, he was due a preliminary hearing, and that was taken away from him, and we ended up with the grand jury, which is now being challenged. So, in terms of fairness, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But if we are being fair, and we are being proper, and we are being right, I believe that there is a potential for this to be dismissed. And the grounds with which he is raising for the dismissal, I believe that they are strong reasons for this to be dismissed. And like I say, before we go, I just want you to comment down below and truly dig deep and tell me if you think that Bryan Kohberger, if he had have been took in for questioning, and then have had discussions around what we've seen already, which is publicly available, would there have been enough there to have charged him with this crime and have him in the position that he's in today? Or do you think that it would have taken more, and there was indeed a lack of evidence? There wouldn't have been enough to have charged him? I want to know down below. Or if you feel that from what we've seen, and taking into consideration all the things we know about how DNA can be transferred, so on and so forth, because that's the main thing. It's understanding, do you truly think that the knife sheath was enough to have him charged on its own? Let me know down below. And I'll catch you all in video 2 later on when we talk about Madison Mogan. Be there or be square.